Good morning, Moray Rabotai. Continuing on Aruch Orachaim, the halachot of Kriyat Shema, Siman Nun Tet, starting Seif Gimel now, and of Tzadi Bet Amud Aleph of regular prints of Mishna Berurah. Maran brings a very interesting machloket in regards to the Kedusha of the Yotzer. We mentioned before that there are 4 times the person says Kedusha, Kadosh, 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 and one of them is the most unofficial one, which we say basically in passing of mentioning of the Kedusha that the Malachim say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that is fit inside the bracha of Yotzer in the brachot of Kriyat Shema in the morning. So is that considered the Dvarim Sheli Kedusha that one person cannot say, like Kaddish and Naktishach and and so on, or is it something that's part and parcel of tefillah and a yachid could say? So Maran writes, Yesh omrim shkedusha shbiyotzer yachid umra, that those who are of the opinion that a yachid could say kedusha shbiyotzer. This is the back of the Masechet Brachot in Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah, in the Perusha of Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah. They hold that a person could say b'yachid without tzibur the Kedusha of Yotzer, because this is part and parcel of the Tefillah. Now we're going to learn more about that. And says, Maran, Lefi she'ena ela sipur devarim. This is nothing but just saying over what Malachim say. It's not that we are trying to make a Kedusha out of this. We're saying what the Malachim say. V'yesh omrim she'yachid medalega. And there are those who hold that a Yachid cannot and should not be saying this alone, because this is considered part of Devarim Shebik Kedusha. This is Rambam in Perek Hea Vilchot Tefillah. The Rambam is of the opinion that this is actually a form of Kedusha said by Tzibur, and therefore a Yachid skips it. Ve'ena ne'emeret l'Rabbi Tzibur. Ve'yesh lachush l'divrehem. And Maran writes, you should be mahmir like the Rambam. Ve'lizaher she'yachid yomrenu benigun u'te'amim kekoreh b'Torah. Maran writes, not that we paskin like Rambam, but it should be choshesh for Rambam. So what do? You read it as if you're reading the pasuk in Tanakh, which needs to be read with ta'amim of Tanakh. Therefore, you say it benigun u'ta'amim kekoreh b'Torah. And the Ramah writes that already the minhag has evolved that the Yachid says it. Pashata minhag kisvara, that the Yachid that does say it. Pashata minhag kisvara rishona. The minhag has evolved to be like the first shita of Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah, that the Yachid could say it, even without nigun and ta'ameh Torah. Ve'yachid omer, otah uchsheonin kedusha zot, omrim otah bekol ram. Yachid says it, and when you say it in the tzibur, you say it bekol ram. The Chafetz Chaim writes, in the Shita of Rambam, that the Yachid skips this Kedusha, Rak Yomar ve'omrim be'yirah kadosh ve'ofanim ve'omrim baruch. Skipping kadosh, 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 and Baruch Hashem HaMorach Rabbael, you just say the minimum that makes the sentence be, having a meaning. You don't want to suck all the meaning out of the sentence, but you don't want to say kadosh, kadosh, kadosh as a kedusha. So what you say is, instead of saying kadosh, 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 you say be'yirah kadosh, ve'ofanim, chayot hakodesh, right? Bekol ra'ash kadosh, omrim baruch. That's it. Katav bePri Chadash. The Pri Chadash writes, afilu im haya yachid mitpalel levado b'shvil she'echar lavo. Says, what if you have a scenario that the person is davening late, but he is in a tzibur. So he's standing in the shul, but he's late. So he's not saying the kedusha of kadosh, kadosh, kadosh with the tzibur. He's behind a few minutes. So he's catching up. But when he says this kedusha, he's alone, but he is found with a minyan of tzibur. He's with tzibur that has shechina with them. Says the Pri Chadash, you could say it according to everyone. Once you find yourself with 10 people, then you could say this kedusha even if you're not holding in the same place that they are holding. And the Ben Ish Chai says in this shita of the Rambam that the person should skip this. Ben Ish Chai says, even though that you're saying Sipur Devarim Ba'alma. You're just saying what Malachim say. It's part of but nevertheless, this Shita holds, the Rambam holds, even though that you're saying over what the Malachim say in their tefillah to Hashem, still considered part of our tefillah. We're trying to emulate that praise that the Malachim say to Hashem, and we make a Dvarim should be Kedusha out of it. Therefore, you should not say it alone, says the Ben Ish Chai. If you have 10 people already, Kaf Chaim says that if 3 or 4 of them have not gotten to Kedusha yet, you have a minyan misumsam. You only have 10 people, right? And you know that the Shaliach Tzibur is pushing the pedal to the metal, and he's going fast. Only maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 people are davening with the same pace as the Shaliach Tzibur. At the very least, 2, 3, 4 of them are not davening at the same pace. So says the Kaf Chaim, you could still be mesaref them b'di'eved, and is considered Kedusha B'tzibur. But seems from Kaf Chaim that at least you need 6 people to say it together. So therefore, he is using the Pri Chadash that we said, the Pri Chadash that says even one person could say it so long as you have 10 in the room. But Kaf Chaim is not willing to do it all the way. He says at least the Rov Minyan you should have. 6 people say it together, then it's fine. Even if 3, 4 of them are still behind, trying to catch up with the Shaliach Tzibur, still would be okay to do that. Pashat Minhag, the Ramah who says the Minhag has evolved like the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah to be lenient, says the Chafetz Chaim, the Vilna Gaon, Hiskim la'alacha leda'a achrona. The Vilna Gaon does not agree with the Minhag. He paskins like the Rambam, that this is considered a Dvarim Shebiktusha, ולפי שאין לזוז מהמנהג, נכון להדר אם אומר ביחיד לומר בניגון וטעמים. So he basically paskins like Maran, Mishna Berurah. Says even though that the minhag of the Ashkenazim is to do it like Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah, that even a Yahid says it even quietly, but because the Vilna Gaon paskins like the Rambam, but at the same time we don't want to go against the minhag, so how do you make peace between the Vilna Gaon who paskins like Rambam, and as we mentioned many times, Chafetz Chaim puts the heaviest weight in the Achronim on Vilna Gaon. So when you have Vilna Gaon, you have the Minhag on the other hand. What do? Says the Chafetz Chaim, what Maran Shulchan Aruch suggests is the best way. Say it, Yahid, but say it with Nigun and Ta'amim of proper Ta'amim of reading the Torah, as if you're reading from Tanakh. This way, you're not doing something wrong, because even if the halakha is like Rambam, well, so I'm still reading some Tanakh over here. It's not Dvarim Shebiktusha. Not now, right? We're going to have some shiur on Ta'amim soon, but we're gonna have differences in how the Ta'amim are, but the basic things within Sfaradim are the same, within the Ashkenazim are the same, even though you have different small deviations. But nevertheless, says the Mishna Berurah, the halakha would follow the Rambam because of the Vilna Gaon, but we don't want to go against the Minhag, so therefore say it, but say it with Ta'amim, right? Now, we mentioned that the Kaf Chaim does not paskin fully like the Pri Chadash. It's not only the Kaf Chaim. The Ben Ish Chai also disagrees with the Pri Chadash. Both Kaf Chaim and the Ben Ish Chai, they say that even if you have a tzibur, but you are behind from the tzibur, and you don't have 6 people at least, the rov of minyan with you, because you're not saying it with them, the halakha is like a yahid, and therefore you should say it with nigun and tamim. This is something very, very relevant, because time from time to time happens. A person chas v'shalom comes a few minutes late, or the speed of the minyan that you're in is not the speed that you're used to, so you fall behind a little bit, and you're saying the kedusha. You even maybe 10 seconds after, but it's 10 seconds after. So if you're not saying it together with them, or some people are faster, right? I once saw one of the children that was reading fast, in order to learn afterwards, in order to catch up until later on, and then learn a little bit until the Shaliach Tzibur slowly catches up to them. So I told him, it's wrong. What you're doing is wrong, because you're missing saying the Kedusha Yotzer B'Tzibur. for no reason, you're getting yourself into machloket. You're already doing faster than Shas. Don't stop later. Stop here. Wait for the Shas to catch up to you and say the kedusha together with the tzibur. Okay, so that's the psak of the Mishna Berurah. To say it with ta'amim, and again, as we mentioned before, the Ben Ish Chai and the Kaf HaChaim say the same thing, that if you're b'yachid davening or you're behind from the speed of the Shaliach Tzibur, then you'll say it b'ta'amim. The Kaf HaChaim adds that a person, even when saying it b'tzibur, should say it b'ta'amim. So that's something that you see many people do, that even when they say it out loud with the Shaliach Tzibur, they still keep the ta'amei mikra. And the reason for it is because once you are ragil, once you learn and you become accustomed to saying it with ta'amei mikra, regardless of whether you're doing it with tzibur or not, when you're alone, also you'll know it by heart, and you won't come to say it ever without proper pronunciation, without proper ta'amim, and that would become something that's going to serve you well when you are davening alone. Okay. Now, Ben Ish Chai says that you read this with nigun of nevi'im, which is a whole thing by itself. What's the difference between Torah and nevi'im in the nigun that you write? So that's just something in the back of your minds to keep in mind, and then we'll Bezrat Hashem at some point maybe discuss that. Says the Mishna Berurah v'chen katav Birur Megadim. Birur Megadim passes the same way in the name of Rabbi Mordechai Yafe, the Levush. Shetov lizaher, but you should be careful to say it with ta'amim if you're alone. Be choshesh for the shita of the Vilna Gaon and the Rambam and Maran Shulchan Aruch. Say it again. So that's a good question. You say if you're, depending on where you are, not in every place you could. For instance, if you said Ishtabach already, you could say it, but the question is not that. The question is, that's not part of your Birkat Yotzer. When you get to Yotzer later on, what do you do? Are you going to skip it? Rambam will tell you to skip it. Right? Rabbi Yorat, Talmidei Rabbi Yorat will tell you, no, say it. And Maram would say it with Ta'amei Mikra. So it doesn't really have much bearing on that. If you could answer or not, fine, but you're not where you're supposed to be. So what do you do when you do get to Birkat Yotzer? This kedusha of Yotzer, if possible, you should say it sitting down. Now, this is Mishna Berurah talking, right? And even though that Mishna Berurah is really mentioning this from Be'er Hetev, and Be'er Hetev is bringing it perhaps also in a Kabbalistic thing, but nevertheless, Al Pi Kabbalah, the way the Sephardi poskim explain this is because this is in Olam, the way I remember, the Ben Ish Chai explains this to be because Ariya Kadosh writes that the Birkat Yotzer is Olam HaKiseh, is in Olam HaBriyah, which we call Olam HaKiseh, so there everything is sitting, right? And therefore, even if you're standing, the Ben Ish Chai would have it that even if you're standing up, you would have to sit down for this. It's not just telling you to not get up, but even if you're standing up, you sit down, says the Ben Ish Chai in Parashat Shemot, in this week's parasha, right? Next week's parasha. Says the Ben Ish Chai actually adds that if when you say the kedusha, you should touch the tefillin shel yad, again because of the olam HaBriyah and so on, and you kiss it. Pi Kabbalah, you don't touch the tefillin shel rosh in this area of tefillah, but the Kaf HaChaim says you don't kiss the tefillin in that time because you need to answer kedusha with kavanah, and any act that you do. It's like answering Kaddish. You don't do anything. You just answer Kaddish, right? He also is answering Kedusha. You want to do it with full kavanah So you do not kiss the tefillin, says the Kaf HaChaim. In that time, if you are busy finding your tefillin shel yad under your suit and trying to kiss it, then it becomes like a mechanical thing. You want to close your eyes and say it with kavanah, and therefore stop doing anything, not even kissing the tefillin. And it's not kavod also when you're saying kadosh, kadosh, kadosh to the king. You don't want to be doing anything else. You want to be completely focused on respecting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there is a machloket between this mekubalei hasefaradim. Even though the Ben Ish Chai was the Rebbe of Kaf HaChaim in some sense, before he moved from Baghdad to Eretz Yisrael, and then his wife had to come afterwards. This is when the Ben Ish Chai was actually alive still. The wife went and asked the Ben Ish Chai what to do. Should she move after him with the whole family and sell the Sfarim and so on and so forth? The whole story attached to that. But nevertheless, here the Kaf HaChaim begs to differ with the Ben Ish Chai on this detail. It's not the time for that mitzvah. Even though that Kabbalistically speaking, this area of tefillah has to do with tefillin shel yad, but to take away from the basic halacha that you're answering dvarim shebikdusha, especially because Maran is choshesh for the Rambam that this is dvarim shebikdusha, so Kaf HaChaim, goes on the side of caution, so to speak, that you should be more careful with the kedusha. Okay, Bekol Ram, this that the Ramah writes that they used to do this Bekol Ram, Davka betzibur, aval beyachid, Omer belachash. Only in tzibur you say it Bekol Ram, but when you're beyachid, you don't have to say it Bekol Yam. Bekol Ram, you could say it, with a low voice. Belachash keva ken katav bedi rabam, aval b'sharet shuva katav she'en kepeda af biyachid. Sharet Shuva writes that even if you're biyachid, you can still say kadosh, kadosh, kadosh bekol ram. There's no problem whatsoever with saying it bekol ram. Bezrat Hashem, the Seif Dalet will start in the days to come.